Welcome back to the Avian Avarice podcast. Today, we're talking about our most memorable moments in birding. And if you don't have any yet, we're hoping that sometime soon you're going to have some of your own. But we're going to recollect a couple of ours from over the years to inspire. And Andrew, you want to start us off?
Absolutely, because there's just one without a doubt in my mind. I mean, there's been a lot of spectacular birding moments, a lot of good moments on World Series too, but just some of them really stick out above the rest. And without a doubt, this one just comes down hands down on top. I'm not going to mention what it is at first because I feel like that gives away the big reveal, but I'll start to set the scene for you, start narrowing it down as I leave clues. I don't know if these guys know about this one yet, but this is definitely my number one bird that I've ever seen in my life. So this particular bird had been the top of my most wanted list for a very long time, pretty much ever since I was a kid. It's a very charismatic bird. But my buddy Jack and I ended up going to Alaska last year in June for about 2 weeks. And, Alaska is pretty much like the last frontier for, US birding and all that stuff. And there's just a lot of cool stuff out there that you cannot see anywhere else just because it is so far north and so far west. And you get all this crazy stuff out there. This particular bird is not, it's pretty widespread, but you do have to go very far north to see one of these. So picture this: you're in Fairbanks, Alaska. There's nothing but just boreal forest for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. Like it's everywhere. And in particular, we were really interested in seeing this bird. However, it happens to be hidden on eBird, where they usually eBird, if you search up a species in the explore species function, or I think it's species maps function, it'll show you like little dots and hotspots where it's been seen recently. However, for certain sensitive species, they block it out. And this particular bird I was looking for, I was looking at the maps, but it's just like these rectangles, and that was all I was getting. So I was thinking, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to see this thing, even though it's my most wanted. There's certain places you can go, and I was just like, I'm really at a loss here. Like, no one seems to have a good lockdown spot. So I set the filter to June, just for the month of June that year, to see what had been reported. And this one rectangle was really deep purple, which means there had been a couple reports. So I was thinking, I was like, I have this whole square to work with. I was like, but really there's no hotspots in the region. I checked, there were no main hotspots. So I was like, I wonder if I can get anything off of satellite maps. So I went to Google Maps, looked at satellites, and in particular, this bird would most likely be around like some sort of field or meadow type thing. So I looked at one spot and I was like, that looks pretty interesting. And we were passing through that area on a drive-by from Fairbanks all the way down to Denali Highway. And we basically had one shot because we had to get down there. It was a long drive, and we couldn't really afford much more time than this one stopover. So we get down there and we're just driving down this road, and I see there's a sign on one of the roads that says private property, do not enter. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, it's so close, but so far. But I was like, maybe we could keep driving down the road a little bit. There's a little bit more. So then we go up, and then it kind of corners off, and there's this like ATV path that goes up. And I was like, I don't think that's going to get us to the meadow, but maybe it's worth a shot. So, we put on all our stuff. The mosquitoes are just absolute hell. So, we're like draped head to toe in mosquito nets, like gloves, all that stuff. And we start walking down this ATV trail and trudging. And my friend Jack goes like, he's like, something weird just flew across the trail. He's like, is that a turkey or something? It was like turkey size. And I was like, there's not supposed to be turkeys up here. That's weird. So then start trudging along, like trying to get to this meadow. And then I look up and I see something flying down the path straight at us, looking at me dead in the eyes, is my most wanted bird in the US, great gray owl, coming straight down this path. And I am like wheezing once I realize what this is, like, just that moment of adrenaline. And I'm just like, Jack, right there. The thing just like kind of, it landed not too far away, but decently far away, where enough, we weren't like gonna mess it up. So it goes and kind of lands up on like one of the trees that's lining this path, and I'm losing it. I'm like, what do I do? Do I look at this? Do I take pictures? So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna look at this thing for a little bit, and it just stood there looking around, and then I was like, okay, maybe it's time for some pictures, and I snapped a couple off, and then the thing just flies off, and at that point, I am just on cloud nine. I was like, I just found my most wanted bird in the country through Google satellite maps and a square. And I was just, that was like, it felt like all of my birding knowledge had just come together to that point to make happen. Definitely my best birding experience to date. And just, that's something I'm going to have with me as long as I remember. I got a little photo that I'll actually load in a little bit, but just, it's just a great gray owl looking down from a pine at a path. And, it was just, that's just, man, they're so cool. They're just a great gray owl, for context, is a massive, massive bird, glowing yellow eyes, like really round head, and just kind of cool stripes and patterns and stuff. But yeah, that bird caught my attention ever since I was a kid, and man, it couldn't have gone down in any better way. And as it happens, it was my 700th bird for the US, so a milestone one to boot.
Wow.
So my turn.
Indeed.
All right. I have, it's funny. I actually went birding with Dan today, and I said something out loud that I didn't really have a thought much. I didn't really think about before too much, but I did say that in almost 13 years of birding, you come across a couple of moments while you're doing this where you just feel time stop or connected to nature more in a way than you ever have before. And I have multiple stories like that, but I have chosen two. And one of them is solitary, just me, and one of them is with a group of people. And the first one, now, since I started birding, I already had, I started before I had kids, and then I started getting better at it and then had kids. And kids obviously are restricting to what you could do. So I decided to focus on the county level that I live in, Passaic County, New Jersey. So, the objective is to get as many birds in your county as you can, so that you don't have to really ever go too far, but you could still venture out when you have the time to do so. And I was at Ringwood Manor State Park in the town I live in, Ringwood, New Jersey, and I did a round of Ringwood Manor, and there wasn't much to report. Normal day. Some decent birds, some mostly average birds, and then I get in my Pontiac Grand Prix, and I had parked under hemlocks at the top of this parking lot, and I saw a couple of maybe 3/4 inch to 1 inch long acorns that were on my windshield wipers. I didn't think anything of it until I saw one fall on my windshield while I was about to literally leave. I was done. I was going home. And I'm like, that's odd. Something just dropped on my windshield. So I lower the window and stick my head out, and I find my lifer, and still only one I've ever seen, white-winged crossbill. I was just floored. Are you what? It literally dropped litter on my car. And I get out of the car, and I have what I would call one of those time stop moments where you just get out and it's just you and that bird, and you are in just utter awe of the fact that you and this bird are sitting there looking at each other and there's no one else around. And it is just such a surreal, awesome feeling that I don't think you could experience unless you do something like this. And it doesn't even have to be birds. It could be nature photography, whatever. It was just a moment. Then I called Dan and made him come, and the bird I was looking at flew away. And I was like, damn it, now he's not going to believe me. And because I don't know what I'm doing at this point. I'm very young in the terms of, experienced bird watching. And I'm like, oh God, he's going to think I'm just an idiot. And then I'm like, whatever. We go chase the one I can't find that flew away. And then he winds up getting, I don't know, 3 or 4, was it, Dan?
Sorry.
He found 3 or 4 more. So whatever. So great day. The other one, this is when I think Andrew was probably like a freshman in high school. I don't even know. I have no idea. But it was me, Rob, and Dan. We're at the Super Bowl of birding aka the Super Bob, up in Massachusetts. And the event is on a Saturday. It is frigid cold. It is late January. And it snows so freaking hard for the event that they move it to Sunday. And we can't stay the whole event on Sunday. So now we're stuck in a place we would never otherwise be unless we were there for a competition. So what do? We salvage the day and we walk out in the snow. And we decide to go to Plum Island. We walk out on the beach, and there's got to be 4 inches of snow, at least 4 or 5 inches of snow. We walk out on the beach, and for whatever reason, the 3 of us are staring out into the Atlantic Ocean, and it's snowing hard. And then all of a sudden, a snowy owl just goes flying over the ocean, not over the land. There's no reason for this bird to be anywhere near where it is. And it just flies through a dark gray, overcast background sky with medium hard snow falling over ocean water. And the 3 of us are just like, why? What? Like that was, so those are my 2 stories. I have, a one-on-one personal story and a group effort that I don't think will ever be seen again, even if you tried to do so. I don't know. Those, I have others, but I don't know. That snowy owl was really cool, man. That was just so cool.
I have 3 real quick. So one of which is significant because of like what it meant about my like level of birding. One, because it was a life experience, and then a third one just real quick because it was just a neat thing to see, while birding. So the first one is when I'm early on in my birding career. I can't remember if I am in can't remember if I'm still in undergrad or if I'm in grad school, but I'm still at Montclair State University, and one of the kind of birding hotspots near that area is Garrett Mountain. And historically, when we were, doing this route in various forms of our World Series of Birding, that would be on there because it was a great place during spring migration, because especially if it was a fallout day, yeah, especially if it's a fallout day. I'm seeing Justin in my corner of my screen here. Especially if it's a fallout day up on the ridge, it's going to be tons of birds, and then it kind of filters down through. So I'm there, and I'm by myself, and up near the horse stables area of that particular park, and I'm looking around, and the first thing I notice is I just see a bird, and you're keeping track of kind of everything that you're seeing. And I think if I'm trying to remember the thought process in my head, I think remember again, that's a weird mockingbird. Like I just see something, like I see the colors and I see like something that's over there. And then the first, alarm bells go off of like, well, there's not that many things that are weird in birding. Like, it's like, if there's something weird, that's something notable, and you probably should look at it more or hear it more or do something, like do a little bit more, investigative work. So then I go look and I'm like, that's not a mockingbird at all. And I actually get like, some eyes on it. And I'm like, well, I still don't know what it is. Like, at this point I'm like brand spanking new. So, I'm sitting there taking out my bird book because I'm like, well, that wasn't any of the ones that I looked at recently. That wasn't anything that made sense to me. And so I'm flipping through and I get towards the thrushes and I'm like, it kind of looks like that one. And I'm like, I don't think that's supposed to be here. And so then I'm like, now it's like you gotta, put your big boy pants on, because you're about to call something that is pretty rare for the area. And you don't know how rare because you're brand new to this. You just know it's not supposed to be here. And it's also like, I'm not involved in any sort of these, chain mails is what I thought of them as, of, like some sort of, you're going to get bad voodoo if you don't pass this on to somebody else kind of thing. And I'm like, well, I know Dan, and Dan, I'm sure, can talk to somebody who knows birds and like get people here to like know that this thing is a thing. And so then I'm trying to sit there and call Dan, I'm like, hey, I have this thing here. And it's a very short, but very quick back and forth of like, listen, if I'm going to do this, like that better be that thing. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it is absolutely that thing. I'm looking at it in the book. I'm looking at this, looking at the book, looking at it. Like it's that. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. I go, it's like a robin, but it looks like a mockingbird in colors. They're in different spots. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm going to stay on this thing until it moves there. So eventually, whatever, alarm bells go off. He gets the word out. A bunch of people show up. And so it was the first, that was like my first like big boy moment in birding of like finding something that was rare, being the first one on it, trying to get everyone else onto it, having no idea how to do that process. So that was like a significant point in my birding career pretty early on.
And for the record, Rob.
Yeah.
When you called me, I was on hall duty, sitting in the hallway of my school, and I'm like, "Are you sure this is what like? This is like not a bird that you're supposed to have here." I mean, I believe it was the first county record. Like this was actually like a really significant bird. I think it's the only county record, to be honest, for that county. So that's not my story, but I do remember that very, very vividly. And then thinking like, I got to get out of here. Like I got to get out of work and go find this thing.
Yeah. And I remember being very proud. Like there was that moment of hesitation of like, why is he vetting me? He knows I'm like good for my work. But then I was like, then you're like, no, like I have to like, it's also again, putting your big boy pants on of like, if you're going to say something is what it is, you have to accurately describe what you're seeing, how you're seeing it, the behavior that makes sense. Like, well, hey, I mean, it's moving around like another thrush. It's not moving around like some other bird of a different category. It has the features that it does. It has the field ID and how you're describing it. And, so it was the first kind of having to do all of that for, keeps, if you will. So that was the one. The next one, and I'll attempt to pronounce this bird in as many ways as possible to infuriate and or appease as many people as possible. One of the first times that I really went for like a true chase, like in this case, an out-of-state chase. It was Dan and I, and we went down to Delaware because there was a Sabin's gull that was seen down there. Now, someone had seen the Sabin's gull. I'm going to keep trying to do this to appease as many of our players on either side of the pond, up and below the Mason-Dixon line, that had been seen there, had been seen by somebody else, and I think had maybe been seen for a handful of days at that point. And it was kind of, it was the DuPont Nature Center is what it was kind of hanging around. The day that we went down to go see it, however, it was like kind of a cloudy, foggy day. The winds were picking up. It was starting to move around. And I don't think anyone had seen it that day yet, I think was the story that we were walking into. And I remember, scoping out all the gulls there and then finally picking it out of the crowd and be like, oh, there it is. It's right there. It's moving west. It's moving east. It's moving whatever. Got really nice, good long looks at it. And great. Like it was, that so rarely happens where you show up and in relatively short order, okay, there's the really rare thing. It's right there. We're able to see it. We get great views. It's on the mud. It's in the air. It's doing its thing. You can see the beautiful wing pattern, blah, blah, blah. And so Dan and I are a history together. If we've had like a significant, semi-significant, event, we will go and get the glass Coke bottles and, sit there and tap bottles to celebrate our mini victory, whether it was a good hike, a good camping trip, whatever. So we go to do that. I have no cash on me. So I go to an ATM, and the background to this is at this point in time in my life, I am engaged to be married to someone of Russian origin. And I go to take money out from the ATM and I go, that's weird. And like very naive, very like whatever, see that the balance was significantly less than what it had previously been. And the long and short of that is that this significant other and I had saved up 20 grand worth of stuff, and I'm in the process of being in the middle of medical school while this is all going on. So this is first year medical school, very stressful year to begin with. And we had saved 20 grand with the plans of that summer going to her home country and spending our honeymoon, like touring her families and seeing everybody, seeing the countryside, because you get about a 2-month window between first year and second year, and that's essentially your last real vacation of med school. Then it's, just 3 years marathon after that. So I get a receipt back and it says $8,000 on it, and I'm like, that's weird. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, we're in a different state. Like maybe there's like a cap in what, like how much it can show or something like that. Whatever. I chug my Coke, go, think nothing of it. We got our bird. Excellent. And then I proceed to go, and my apartment had been scrubbed of any existence of that person ever being there at all whatsoever. All pictures gone, any items in the apartment gone, just completely gone. And then that person spent the next 2 months in home country doing said honeymoon activities just without me there. So I will remember that bird till the day I die, because I remember that specific event. Because how could you not possibly remember that? And that's part of the thing when you end up being in birding. Like there's significant life events that you end up remembering, not because the bird was necessarily the most important thing, but it was much more salient because of the fact that there was this bigger picture, this bigger story going on. Now, don't worry, it all ends well. In very short order after that, I end up meeting who would then be my wife of now 9 years and one kid on the way, Meg, which again, thank God, because that was a real bad time at the time. But again, that birding becomes kind of an aspect of your life, but it kind of brings into, when artists are, I think Jessica could probably speak to this more, but when an artist is sitting there doing some sort of creation or doing some sort of work, it's all about the texture. It's about the context. It's about a lot of other things other than just what you're seeing on a page or what you're seeing on like a statue or something like that. So for me, that's what birding was. It was another part and another piece to a greater story, and that's why it became that much more salient. And leading on to our next speaker here, Dan, one of our shared experiences is we got to go to Guatemala together. And this is just a quick one. Again, something that'll stick out just because it's as a kid that was born and raised in New Jersey, it was just such a weird thing to see. Is we were in Guatemala, and I want to Cayala, is that Sayala? I forget where it was, Ecological Park in Guatemala. And we look up and there's a northern pygmy owl that's being like harassed by an azure-crowned hummingbird. And it was just so bizarre. Like you just immediately knew you weren't home, that there's an owl that's being pestered and like harassed by a very large hummingbird. Very large hummingbird comparatively to the owl. And it was just such a bizarre thing. And I just remember being like, this is really neat. And that's it. A lot of times you have a lot of those kind of experiences too in birding, where it's like, you're looking at something, you're enjoying nature, and you just have that little moment to kind of take something in and be like, that's neat. I wonder if anyone else has actually gotten to see like what I just got to see. But anyway, with that Guatemala intro, Dan, I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah. I think we all have like those experiences where you have like an exotic moment, Rob and I, we had a moment, actually it kind of weirdly parallels Justin's crossbill story. We were walking through a nature preserve in North Carolina, and the day before we were out there looking for red cockaded woodpecker and other things, and we're out there looking, and we got caught in this thunderstorm, and my phone got just destroyed. We got so completely soaked that I just burned out my phone in my pocket. So the next day we're out again looking for whatever. My phone's not working. And we're like walking under this tree. And I think it was Rob who noticed that there was like some wood shavings coming down. And we look up, and there's the woodpecker like right above us excavating something, and, silently. And that's how we got the bird, was just the stuff falling down in front of us. I've had a lot of really memorable experiences. Like I was on, I think it was Mount Lewis in Queensland, Australia, and the guide that I was with, I won't go on the whole story, but he was very surprised along with me when we were walking on this trail and startled a southern cassowary, and the thing just bolted, and I felt like I had just seen a dinosaur. because it was so fast and so big and just totally unexpected. I've had a bunch of other cool things. Rob will probably remember the first time we had black rail, when the thing sort of called like as if it was on cue. And I went on this night hike and saw North Island brown kiwi in New Zealand. Was really cool stuff. But the story that I'm actually going to tell is not exotic at all. In fact, it's sort of mundane in a lot of ways. People ask me all the time, like, what's your favorite bird? And my answer might be a little surprising, because a lot of people have these really, something that's really cool, something that does something that no other bird does, or it's really like colorful or dramatic or something like that. Mine's pileated woodpecker, right? Maybe it's not a special bird, maybe it's a common bird for a lot of people, but it has always been one of my favorite birds. And I don't know it's because of this one experience, but I think it definitely has something to do with it. When I was I want to say I was 9 years old. I was on I think it was my first Cub Scout camping trip. And I grew up in a place where there were no pileated woodpeckers, right? In a suburban area of New Jersey that was suburban enough, like built up enough, that there were no pileated woodpeckers in the area. So I don't know if I'd ever seen one before or not, but if I had, it was far from home. And so here I am the first time I'm on this Cub Scout camping trip. I'm at Camp Novi Bosco outside of Blairstown, New Jersey. And one morning, probably Saturday morning, Sunday morning, I get up and it's November, it's cold. The leaves are different colors on the trees. There's mist over the lake. And it's one of these just really, picturesque scenes that even somebody who was not 9 years old would look at and say, this is really cool. And to me, I felt like I was in the wilderness. Like Andrew talked about being in Alaska, and that's really the wilderness. But when you're 9 years old and you've never really been deep in the woods because you don't have it where you live, being in that part of the state to me was like being literally in the middle of nowhere. And I thought that I had gone into this, remote frontier place. And while I'm standing there looking out over the lake, this pileated woodpecker comes out of the trees, and, like some sort of clownish missile is just coming across the lake. The colors, the big wings flapping, the stripe, the red on the head, and doing that kind of laughing, cackling call, kick, 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 that they kind of do when they're flying. And just seeing this thing flying across the lake and then disappearing into the trees on the other side, I just felt like this was the coolest thing. It was emblematic of the woods and the wilderness, and being in some place that was so remote and distant from where I lived. And I think from that time forward, I kind of always associated pileated woodpecker with that sort of being out in nature feeling. And the fact that they are so big and sort of just don't care who else is around. And I in my head, people have nicknames for birds. This may sound really cheesy and I don't say it to other people, but in my head, I think the nickname for pileated woodpecker is the clown king of the forest. That's the way I view it, because of the sounds it makes and the way, it does that weird thing with its head when it's pecking at stuff. It kind of looks to the side so its eye can see the tree. I love the bird, and that's the first memory I have of seeing it. And I think that's something I'll always remember, as long as I can remember things. I think, having these kinds of memories in birding is one of the cool things about it. Like Rob was saying, you kind of have these associations between things in your life and then things that are birding. That's kind of reminds me of my childhood too, that's a thing that a memory I had from when I was a kid. And you never know what memory you're making now is going to be that thing in 5 or 10 years, right? Things that some of us said tonight are things that just happened a year or two ago, right? So we may be looking back on those things for decades and say, wow, it was awesome when I saw that bird, when that thing happened to me, which is pretty cool. And I think this is just a little tiny snippet of some of the experiences that we've had, but I think that kind of gives you an idea of why we like birding so much and what it means to us on a personal level. So you got to get out there and make some of your own memories, right? You got to get out there and do some birding yourself. And you're going to have those kinds of moments as well when something really awesome happens and something unexpected or dramatic happens that you will remember for the rest of your birding career. So get out there and do it. Go birding.